Do you need us to put our name back in the chat?
Yes, thank you very much. Yes. Well, Shannon, I'm glad you could make it. Well, I apologize for the technical difficulties. I think I'll just wait a minute. I see folks still popping on. Okay, I'll wait just another minute. Well, once again, glad everybody's back together here, and I appreciate your patience. We are here to talk about the EFSP Phase 40 funding that has been awarded to Duval County. And the idea here, like I said before, is to gain or to share information about EFSP program, and actually to provide hopefully some helpful tips on submitting a successful application. So with that, the purpose and intent of EFSP. So our jurisdiction, Duval County, for Phase 40 was awarded $330,000 to supplement emergency food and shelter programs. The amount that's available to agencies who are applying for funding is $324,000, actually $324,328 to be exact. And this funding, it's actually it's appropriated by Congress, and it's managed through the national board that's located in Arlington, Virginia. It's chaired by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, and it consists of representatives from American Red Cross, Catholic Charities, as well as Churches of Christ in the USA, Jewish Federations of North America, Salvation Army, and there's representation from United Way as well. And so it's funding appropriated by Congress to help expand the capacity of existing food and shelter programs in high needs areas of our country. And the spending period, I just wanted to put this out there at the outset. This particular program, it kind of does run retroactively. It's intended to run concurrent with the active phases right now of Phase 39, as well as ARPAR, the American Rescue Plan funding that is still ongoing. So the spending period actually is November 1st, 2021 through December 31st of 2023. And this kind of gives you an outline of how this is organized. So the authorization for this funding actually comes from the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. The purpose again is to support ongoing efforts to provide shelter, food, and supportive services. Basically, it's intended to provide assistance to those who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. It's governed by the National Board, which again is located in Arlington, Virginia. And it's implemented by the local board. So Changing Homelessness actually serves as the local board in our jurisdiction, which is Duval County. And again, this is a competitive grant process. That's why it's important to have a good understanding of the grant and really submit a very high quality application. Because, you know, obviously, when the review committee evaluates it, they want to make sure that funds are used appropriately and that the quality of the application has a lot to do with how these funds, the decisions that are made in regards to what agencies receive funding. All right, here's a little bit more about the local board implementation. So again, it's a competitive grant process. So what we do here is when it's time, we get the announcement from the national board that the funding is made available and we receive the actual official notice of the funding. That's when we start the process and we communicate to our community that the funds are available. Part of that is that there's a requirement by the program to put an ad in the newspaper. So we satisfy that by putting an ad through the daily record of the NOFA announcement. When the volunteer, we also recruit volunteers to review the applications. And so we keep meeting minutes regarding the process, the decision-making process related to the funding. Again, Changing Homelessness does not have any say or input in those decisions. The decisions are actually made by the volunteer review committee. All we do is we kind of set the platform and give information regarding the program, and we allow the volunteers to make those decisions as appropriate. So we verify agency services, select agencies for funding. That's done through the committee that's convened. And then the funding decisions in regards to allocations are made. And all of that is communicated. So we're very transparent about it. We let everyone know which agencies were actually funded. So the primary responsibilities also includes making sure that we have a written appeals process. So if there's any disagreement regarding the funding that's allotted, there is a process agencies can follow to appeal those decisions. We create a system to ensure that there's no duplication of services. That's why we've recently, in regards to that, we want to make sure that agencies who apply are able to participate, or actually if an agency is providing rent, mortgage, or utility assistance on behalf of clients, that HMIS participation is mandatory. And it's just for that purpose, to ensure that we're not duplicating services. In addition to that, it's a way to be able to tell how many clients and how much is a way to confirm the actual expenditures under the program. And also, as would be no surprise, you do have to submit required reports to the national board. So once the funding decisions are actually made, there's a local board plan that is submitted to the national board. And that's kind of starts the process in regards to agencies receiving their initial installment of funding. And as agencies spend money, agencies are required to submit submit an interim report. So that's the way for us as a local board to know that you're on track with the spending. And at the conclusion of the grant cycle, there is also a final report that is submitted. And generally what that looks like is there are required spreadsheets depending upon the category of funding that an agency receives. Those have to be completed. And it's also very important that you, if you're awarded funding and you're providing services, that you maintain all the required documentation. That information is included in the EFSP manual, as well as the quick reference guides. And that information for monitoring and auditing purposes has to be maintained for a minimum of 3 years. In addition to that, we do receive a 2% administrative allowance for providing the supportive services for this particular program. So let's take a minute and talk about the eligible services and expenditures. So this kind of gives a really good outline of those. For food services, congregate meals are eligible. Food purchases, there are agencies who utilize this funding to actually purchase food for their food pantries. Home delivery meals, Meals on Wheels, that's also something that can be considered. Shelter services, mass shelter, those expenses related to maintaining that. Hotel motel expenses, rent and mortgage up to 3 months or 90 days. There's also funding that's available for supplies, cleaning supplies for shelters, small equipment purchases up to $300, PPE, and also utility services for clients that can include gas, electric, what have you, for up to 3 months. And that's a recent change that began with Phase 39. It used to be just 1 month for both the rent as well as the utility assistance, but that's been expanded to 3 months. And so that kind of gives you a bit of an outline. And let me kind of make sure this was actually some guidance that was given by the national board related to some of the changes. And these changes actually were began and were implemented with phases 39 and ARPAR. But you can see specifically if you were an agency that was providing served meals, there is an allowance of $3 per meal. If you're providing mass shelter, there's a per diem nightly rate that's eligible up to $12.50. And then again, the utilities and rent and mortgage, the 90-day limits that I mentioned before, and as well as the hotel and motel, actually for starting Phase 39 went from 30 days up to 90 days. So that assistance is also available on behalf of clients. One thing I did want to mention is that the national board, even for agencies that are newly funded, it used to be that they would just send a check for the initial payment. But now it's set up even for newly funded agencies that they can also make the electronic fund transfer. So that is, of course, that's very convenient and really probably a best practice anyway. But so that is available, and so agencies would be encouraged to do that. And then payments. So what will happen here is it says all payments will be made to LROs via EFT, and then newly funded agencies should submit bank information. And so usually that's a voided check so that the national board can have the account information to set up the EFT. All right, let's talk about tips for a successful application. So what I did to share this information, I went back to some of the scoring sheets that were completed by our review committee members in the past. And so I've compiled some of the feedback that was included on the scoring sheets. So, you know, when it comes to showing or demonstrating the work of your agencies and the impact that work has, it's always important to provide statistics to support goals, program impact goals and outcomes. Those goals, you know, really, it's really important to use a SMART goal format. So they should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. One of the things that was mentioned is that agencies sometimes didn't clearly explain the opportunity cost. So if an agency isn't funded, if their request isn't funded, what would be the negative impact if those funds were not awarded? Also mentioned missing baseline data and future benchmarks for success. So, you know, it's important to be able to demonstrate what your current results are and what the actual goals are for success moving forward with the program. One of the things that was mentioned was the process of service delivery. So how do you go about as an agency providing those services? What does that look like? And and another thing that was mentioned was the lack of the eligibility criteria really wasn't mentioned or clear, the intake and approval process for clients. So make sure that you include that in your application. Also, one of the questions has to do with feedback. It's really important that we seek feedback from the clients that we serve. So how often are surveys requested? What's the participation rate? That's really good information. And also what's really helpful is what do you do with that feedback? If you're collecting that feedback from clients, what are you doing to help to use that information to improve the program? So all that should be kept in mind. And just as a general rule, when you're getting your application ready, one of the things that was mentioned multiple times was documentation of partnerships. Make sure you include those MOAs, those MOU agreements that you have with partner agencies, and any letters of support are really helpful. The committee really looks for that. Check your budget sheet for accuracy. Make sure that the dollar amount on your budget sheet actually matches what your application states. Proofread your application for any spelling or grammatical errors. And also at the very first paragraph of the application mentions criteria for the font and the length of the narrative and margins. It's competitive, and you want to make sure you're actually following the instructions that are on the application, because it's possible the committee may decide to penalize or some of the points may be taken away if the application isn't in the format that is included in the instructions. So just make sure that you're abiding by those things. All right, so let's talk about what happens after the application is submitted. So the deadline, as a reminder, of course, we have all this on our website, but the deadline is March 8th at 5 p.m. Any applications need to be in. There is an email address they should be sent to. As of Wednesday, March 15th, what will happen is that we will have all the application materials ready. They'll be placed in a confidential Dropbox, and the scoring sheets will be provided to the volunteers, and they will begin assessing and evaluating the applications that are received. There'll be a deadline of March 20th for the receipt of those scoring sheets. That information will be compiled and ready for the committee to review on Tuesday, March 21st. And that will be held via Zoom between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. So at that point, the committee will make those funding decisions. And then everything just kind of moves very quickly here. Thursday, March 23rd, we'll make the award announcements to the community. On Monday, March 27th, we will have this will be the deadline. So generally, agencies who've applied for funding, they will have to submit a revised budget so that we have that for our records that will actually match the categories. The funding for each category that they've applied for should match what the award amount is. And then Tuesday, March 28th, we will submit the local board plan to the national board, so that they will have that. In some of these documents that are listed here, there's an LRO certification. So once we send the local board plan to the national board, the agencies will receive electronically a request to complete their LRO certification, as well as a lobbying certification if it's applicable. Also, National Board will, once they've got all the certification documents in and there's an EFT account, then the National Board will deposit that initial installment into the LRO or the agency's account. And during the course of the cycle, there will be an interim report that's completed by the awarded agencies at LRO. And once that's been submitted, and if there aren't any outstanding compliance issues from previous phases, that will allow the national board to process the second installment. So that those are some of the things that happen after the application is submitted. So just going through this, just in regards to reporting and documentation. These are the actual deadlines. These are key program dates. These are always subject to change, so just bear that in mind. But as it stands right now, the interim reports have to be submitted by November 30th. The final reports are due February 15th. So again, the spending period actually ends December 31st, 2023. And then the final reports will be due February 15th. And generally what we do as a local board, we ask you to submit those final reports a couple of weeks. We'll have a local deadline because we really need to have some time to review those reports. Because we want to make sure we've made every effort to reduce any compliance issues. So we really want to review those first, and if there's something that needs correction on the spreadsheet or documentation, what have you, we'll let you know, and we can do our level best to make sure when it's sent to the national board that we reduce the chance or minimize the chance for any compliance issues. So EFSP sample spreadsheet should be used. The local board reviews, we review and approve the reports and then submit to the national board. Required documentation for each category are included in the quick reference guides. And that's a very helpful tool. This documentation should be available upon request by the national board and also for monitoring purposes. So generally what happens is when it's time for the final reports, the national board will choose agencies they want to see the full documentation. For the most part, you just have to submit the spreadsheets unless you're asked for that documentation. All right, so this is my plug for volunteers because we definitely need them. So if you are aware of someone who might be interested in helping us with this endeavor, please point them into my direction. I would love to have them participate in this. It's a great way to learn about the wonderful work that agencies are doing in our community, and just to kind of talk about the actual responsibilities. So volunteers have the duty of reviewing and scoring the applications. They provide feedback, so that we can use that information to help agencies improve the quality of the application. They submit scoring sheets. They participate, and also there's just one meeting in regards to participating in the review committee. On the given date and time, and so that's where the final funding decisions are made. There's just one thing about this. We do want to make sure we avoid any potential conflict of interest. So volunteers may not represent an agency that's actually applying for funding. And again, if you know someone who might be interested, please let them know to contact me, and I'll reach out to them as appropriate. And I also wanted to include some information about the National Board. So this is the National Board contact information. This is their phone number and fax. They're available for technical assistance. If there's of course, as a local board, we're here to answer any questions. But if you have a question that you'd like to pose directly to the National Board, you can do that. You can go to their website, and any EFSP announcements or news related to the program are all posted on there. So at this point, I want to give everyone an opportunity to ask any questions they might have. Are there any questions?
Can I ask about the baseline you were talking about?
Yeah, sure.
So is that meaning a baseline set in strictly EFSP or as an agency working with clients?
Well, it can actually be both. So what it is you want to kind of show how does this program relate to the overall work of your agency. So you can also frame it in that way. But also when it talks about the actual services and assistance that you're providing, what are the goals, and in regards to, really what the reviewers want to see is, how do you link this to housing stability? How is this assistance helping your clients achieve housing stability?
Thank you.
You're welcome. And what we'll do is we're going to actually post this presentation. It's being recorded, and we'll post this on our website as well as this PowerPoint presentation, so you can review it at your convenience. And all the way up till the deadline for the application, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I will help you in any way I possibly can. All right, well, if there aren't any other questions, I wish everybody just a wonderful day.
Hi, David. This is Teresa Tippins. I never got the new link, so I missed your entire presentation. But
I am so sorry. That's okay. We've recorded it.
Yeah.
We've recorded it, and we will post it. And actually, I think I've got everybody's email addresses, so I could actually send this presentation to you. And I'm sorry about that. I did not anticipate not being able to share my my screen. So yeah, but we will definitely make sure that you got the material.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome. All right, everybody take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.